British and so on and so forth. These people have been planted in order to create this disturbance and this discord within the Muslim Ummah. But the influence is such now that they are so-called representatives of Islam. At this moment in time, there are 25 Muslim MPs. Out of them, I was told that day, 8 of them are Qadiani. Or Adnan Hussain from Blackburn, who was recently elected as independent MP, he was telling me. So I said to him that, look, you have a responsibility. Allah Almighty has favored you with this position. You're now in the houses of Parliament, the House of Lords, whatever it may be. Aapki responsibility hai that we should have a definition of what is a Muslim. Otherwise, this situation is only going to get worse. So this is one partial answer to your question. These people have no fear, nor are they concerned. And they know where they are heading. But they were chosen and selected by the British at that time. But now they've got such momentum, such support by the very same government that we, obviously, and the country that we live in, that tackling and dealing with this issue has become more and more important and relevant than ever before. As I've already alluded to, you came a little bit late. This year they had their annual gathering in Alton, just outside of London. Their funding comes from this government. They support one of the biggest headquarters of the Qadianis is in Israel. In Israel. Just to, again, create this disunity amongst the Muslims. So our responsibility, like we have in the last hour and 10 minutes or so, is to educate ourselves in relation to Aqidah Khatm al-Nubuwwat. They are heading for the fires of Jahannam. They will remain there forever. They've been declared as kafir at a state level. As I mentioned earlier on, 1974, then Prime Minister of Pakistan was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And लेकिन उन्होंने कोई आजकल दीन मजहबी को नहीं give it a couple more years and we baqaida reverse kari aur san. So these guys were declared kafir, not just in terms of the scholarly circles. Hussam al-Haramain baqaida also declares Mirza Ghulam Qadiani as a kafir, but also at the state level. But this needs to be something again that is addressed every so often. When we were growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, we used to have Khatm al-Nubuwwat conferences every year in Birmingham. But for the last 15-20 years, that silsila has become munkati, has stopped. That's why we tried to revive this silsila of conferences and workshops in order to educate youngsters like yourselves. And I'm hopeful those, mashallah, who've sat here and listened in the last hour or so, that they've benefited and they've learned and they've made their aqidah firm and solid. Okay? So I've only got half an hour now. Very quickly, none of this is in your book, and please try not to put the books on the floor because we've got verses of the Quran in there. I've been asked to shed some light upon our second topic of discussion, which is regarding the greatest human being after the Anbiya wal Mursaleen, the companion of the cave, the companion of the blessed grave, Sayyiduna wa Mawlana wa Khayruna Abu Bakr as-Siddique radiyallahu ta'ala. So if you have your phones with you, you can write these points down on your phone. MashaAllah, young man's come prepared. He's got his book and pen. He probably knew what the crack was. Maulana told him that you need to make sure you come prepared. So if you want to, you can write in your books, whatever we're going to go through now. Very quickly, a couple of slides we'll go through. Sayyiduna Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was born 2 years and a few months after the year of the elephant. In the books of Seerah, you'll find sometimes the year of the elephant is referred to as 570 AD, sometimes 571 AD. It's not a biggie. And he was born in the city of Makkatul Mukarramah. Therefore, he is the junior of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself was born in the year of the elephant. Maulana recited in the second rakat Surah Al-Fil, right? In Surah Al-Maghrib. And all of this is mentioned in Surah Al-Fil. Here, his father's name is Uthman ibn Amir, known by the kunya Abu Quhafa. Abu Quhafa radiyallahu ta'ala. And his mother is Salma bint Sahar, known by the title Ummul Khair. And both of his parents were companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Albatta ye Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddique radiyallahu ta'ala ki khususiyat khasa. That 4 generations of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddique radiyallahu ta'ala, all of them were companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Parents, as we just mentioned. He himself, of course, the greatest of the companions. Then his children, 3 sons and 2 daughters. And then his grandchildren as well. Bil khusus Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubair radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. Yes, Hazrat Zubair bin Awwam and Hazrat Asma bint Siddique radiyallahu ta'ala anhum as son. The first son from amongst the Muhajirun to be born in Medina Munawwara. Samjhe ho? So 4 pushto, 4 generations, all of them were Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you should know this. Har Sahabi Nabi on Zubair sahab jagi pe na. Har Sahabi Nabi Jannati Jannati. Is which koi shak nahi. Yes? So understand and know. And no other person has this maqam, this sharaf, apart from Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala from the Sahaba. His actual name was Abdullah. Before Islam, his name was what? Abdul Ka'ba. Abdul Ka'ba. And he was known by the title Atiq, with Ain here. One of his affectionate names, which means to be free. Like we find this narration here, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Batta, Sayyidina Talha asked his father, that why was Abu Bakr Siddiq called Atiq? And he said that his mother, Salma, had no sons surviving, and when she was about to give birth to him, she faced towards the Kaaba with him, and she made the dua that, oh Allah, if this one is free from death, then give him to me. This is one understanding. And the second understanding is based upon the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, whoever is pleased to look upon the one who is free from the fire of Jahannam, then let him look upon the face of Abu Bakr Siddiq. And then, of course, from amongst his name, we have As-Siddiqul Akbar, the champion of truth, the most truthful. Akbar ism tafdeel here. Akbaru, Akbarani, Akbaruna, Kabiru, Kubra, Kubrayani, Kubrayatun, Kubarun. So some people, you find this is a red flag as well. Just Siddiq, Siddiq, As-Siddiq, As-Siddiqul Akbar. Yes? And the maqam of the Siddiqeen, we know in the light of the verse from the Quran, from Surah An-Nisa, مَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِم مِّنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. Yes? So ye mamuli maqam nahi. He was the champion of truth, the most truthful. And we know that he received this title on the morning after the night before. The night before, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam traveled to Jerusalem, and then from Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa to the heavenly world, Al-Isra wal. So the following morning, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came back and told Mushrikeen in Makkah that I've traveled from Makkah to Jerusalem. He didn't tell them about the second part of the journey, just the first part. Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu huwa as-sami'ul basir. The first part he told them about. Or is तरीके से Abu Jahl went to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala and said that your prophet claims that he's been to Makkah to Jerusalem, from Makkah to Jerusalem in one night. Makkah to Jerusalem, Jerusalem back to Makkah. Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq then said what? Abu Bakr As-Siddiq. As-Siddiq Akbar he received after he said this. The title he received after he said this. He said what? He said this to Abu Jahl. That you're saying that he's been to Jerusalem and back in one night. We believe in matters far greater than this. We believe in matters that he's told us about far greater than this. Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. So Galiya, and then it was Sayyidina Ali Murtaza, who says what? Imam Tabarani do nakal of this in his book of Hadith. Sayyidina Ali says, on this day, Jibreel came down from the heavens and gave the title as Siddique Akbar to Sayyidina Abu Bakr. Nobody can reach that level. So these are from amongst his beautiful names and aspects of his birth as well. His early life he spent in the city of Makkatul Mukarramah. For those of you who just joined us, we're talking about the greatest human being after the messengers and the prophets, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddique radiyallahu anhu. In his youth, he would join trade caravans that traveled to Yemen and Syria. Eventually became a very successful businessman. And due to this, he had a great amount of wealth. Not only was he known for his skills in business, but he was also acknowledged for his unique manners and conduct as well. Particularly his truthfulness. So this is before Islam. We just mentioned he received the title of Siddique Akbar on the morning after the night before. But even before Islam, he was known for his truthfulness. Therefore, Ghulams of Abu Bakr Siddiq, Ushaq of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, ask yourselves, can we say that we are truthful in our nature? Are we truthful in our business, in our conduct, in our language? When we make promises, do we fulfill them promises? Hadith Sharif hai na, ayatul munafiqi thalathun. That the signs of a hypocrite are three. إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذَبَ. The first sign of a hypocrite is what? When he speaks, he lies. We probably got people within our circle of friends, family members. We know the next statement that they're going to make is going to be a lie. Pakke jhoothe. Jhoot to bagair unhone guzara hi nahi. إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذَبَ وَإِذَا اؤْتُمِنَ خَانَ. The second sign of a hypocrite study. Munafiq is what? A hypocrite is that person that when he's given some sort of trust, he breaches that trust. وَإِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفَ. And the third sign of a hypocrite is what? When he makes a promise, he meaning she as well. When they make a promise, they break that promise. झूठ बोलने, अमानत विच खियानत और वादा खिलाफी. और एक रिवायत में है, even if they pray, even if they fast. ये हमारा तौर तरीका नहीं. बस नमाज़ भी पढ़ने हैं, रोज़े रखने हैं, लेकिन झूठ बोलने हैं. नमाज़ पढ़ने हैं, रोज़े रखने हैं, लेकिन वादा खिलाफी करने हैं. नमाज़ पढ़ने हैं, रोज़े रखने हैं, लेकिन अमानत विच खियानत. तौबा तौबा. So ये ahad karo. On this occasion, monthly Yarwi Sharif here, the last monthly Yarwi Sharif of 2024 in Quba, Masjid, Stockport. Wada karo between you and Allah that ainda asan jhoot nahi bolna. Or is tariqe naal we're not going to break our promises and we're not going to breach the trust that we are given. He was from the Banu Taym tribe. Nabi Sallallahu was from the Banu Quraysh. From the Banu Quraysh. But here, Banu Hashim, from the Quraysh. Here, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq from the Banu Taym tribe. Banu Zuhra, Banu Asad, Banu Hashim, different kabilas within the Quraysh. He never worshipped idols. This is before Islam, early life. Never drank alcohol, never committed adultery, never spoke poetry. Again, within this is a lesson for you and me. We live in a society where it's easy to have access to alcohol. We find our youngsters, especially in Bradford, getting high on helium balloons and gas cylinders and intoxicants. ऐसा किस तरफ जा रहे हैं? एक तरफ ऐसा सिद्दीक़ अकबर का नाम लेने या और गुलामी इजहार करने या मोहब्बत सिद्दीक़ अकबर इजहार करने या, लेकिन दूसरी तरफ हमारा तौर तरीका, the way that we are, what we're involved in, and as youngsters, especially in the UK, we find that the Muslim youth, Pakistani youth in particular, they are at the forefront of most of the bad things that are happening in society. Drugs, dekho ji, Muslims at the forefront. Muslims kya? Pakistanis. Shisha lounges, clubs and pubs, you find that the Muslims are at the forefront. Pakistanis are at the forefront. Dangerous driving, Pakistanis at the forefront. Or maybe it's just a Bradford thing, I don't know. ये हर पास है. मैनचेस्टर विच या कुछ होता जी, बर्मिंघम भी बकायदा. कोई बोलने उससे तैयार ही नहीं. Illicit relationships, boyfriend girlfriend relationships, which have become common now in primary schools and secondary schools. So we claim and we say that we are Muslims, but our actions and our conduct is something opposite. We need to change our ways. And here, before Islam, he was the best friend of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He spent a lot of time in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So much so that his own mother, what was her name again? Salma. Siddique Akbar's mother's name was Salma. Khair, she says that they were like twin brothers. They were like twin brothers. Allahu Akbar. His acceptance of Islam. So when Nabi Islam received the first revelation, somebody from the HIF students, how old was the Prophet ﷺ when he received the first revelation?
40.
I didn't know you were doing HIFs, mashallah. तो सोचना नहीं जान बचाई हो रही है वरना मैं फिर पूरा इस तरीके नाल एमिनेशन कटना सी ना हाँ Nabi Islam was 40 years old when he received the first revelation, the cave of Hira. Zammiluni came down, oh Khatija, cover me, Tawil qissa hai. But we know that the first man to accept Islam, announce Islam, was Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddique radiyallahu ta'ala. He was 38 years old. First woman, Sayyida Khadijatul Kubra radiyallahu ta'ala. First child, Mushkil Kusha, Sher Huda, Sayyidina Ali Murtaza radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And the first freed slave to accept Islam, Sayyidina Zayd bin Harith radiyallahu ta'ala. The same Zayd we spoke about earlier in light of the verse from Surah Al-Ahzab, verse number 40, in relation to Aqidah Khatm Nubuwwat. He was the first to perform the prayer with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the first to give his wealth in the way of Islam. And when he accepted Islam, he had 40,000 dirhams in his possession. He spent all of this on the religion of Islam. This is why Nabi Islam said, no one's wealth benefited me more than the wealth of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. और दूसरी रिवायत में है Nabi Islam said, I have repaid everyone in this world except for two, Sayyidah Khadijatul Kubra and Abu Bakr Siddiq. Allah Almighty will repay them on the Day of Judgment. Or Imam Hakim mentioned in the Al-Mustadrak al-Sahihain, how will Allah Almighty repay them on the Day of Judgment? Imam Hakim on Nisapuri mentions that Allah Almighty will repay them on the Day of Judgment. That all of Kainat, except for the messengers and the prophets, all of Kainat will do the Didar of Allah Almighty together, collectively. But Siddique Akbar and Khadijatul Kubra, they will do the Didar of Allah Almighty Jalla wa Ala individually. Subhanallah. This is how Allah will repay them on the Day of Qiyamah. He was the most generous companion, as we've already alluded to. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, no one has shown greater favor to me than Abu Bakr Siddiq. Yani Abu Bakr Siddiq's ihsanat are still baki upon this ummah. Wo qarz adai baki hai na, wo qarz. That debt is still due by the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, he shared himself and his wealth with me, and he married me his daughter as well. Which daughter? Sayyidah Aisha bint Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So here in another narration, famous narration, on the occasion of the Battle of Tabuk, the Prophet ﷺ made the announcement, who is going to support the army of difficulty? Sayyidina Umar Farooq says to himself, today I'm going to outdo Abu Bakr Siddiq. You heard this narration? So Sayyidina Umar goes home and he gathers all of his wealth. And then he splits his wealth into two parts. So he brings one part of his wealth to the Prophet ﷺ. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, what have you left for your family? He says, I have left the like of it. And half I'm giving to you, Ya Rasulullah, in the way of Islam. Half I've left for my family. Siddique Akbar at this point was gathering everything that he had. Pots and pans, dirhams and dinars. Albatta, even the buttons on his shirt, which he replaced with thorns. So he, Baqaida brings all of this to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, what have you left for your family? Siddique Akbar says what? Abqaytu lahumullah wa rasul. That I have left Allah and His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam with my family. What does Sayyidina Umar Farooq say? Sayyidina Umar says, I will never ever outdo Abu Bakr Siddiq in anything. Riwayat ends here. Abu Dawud Sharif, Tirmidhi Sharif Riwayat. Abdul Rahman as-Sulami do naqal of the next part. Abdul Rahman as-Sulami, great muhaddith. They said that Jibreel came down from the heavens. And Jibreel was wearing the same clothing as Siddique Akbar. Yani buttons replaced by thorns. Jibreel comes to the Prophet ﷺ, gives salam. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gives jawab. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that Oh Jibreel, you are wearing something quite unique today. Jibreel says, Ya Rasulullah, not just me, all of the angels in the heavens are wearing the same attire, the same clothing as Siddique Akbar. And Jibreel then says that Allah Almighty Jalla wa'ala is giving salam to Abu Bakr Siddiq. And Allah Almighty is asking me to tell you to ask Siddique Akbar, Hal anta an rabbika radin? Hal anta an rabbika radin? Ask Abu Bakr Siddiq that is he happy with Allah? He's just given all of his wealth in the way of Allah. Not like you and me, जो मेरे दिन पर बकायदा सोची समझी दे ना अभी है ना नोट लिख लीजिए ये ऐसा नहीं हालत है सिद्दीक़ अकबर gave everything. So Jibreel comes down from the heaven. मामूली चीज तो नहीं ना ये वाला सौफ़ा युअतीका रब्बुका फतरदा उस आयत में बकायदा समझो सब कुछ है ना. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam called Siddique Akbar. Short while after this, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq comes and presents himself to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Jibreel has just come to me. He has told me to give you salam from Allah Almighty, and he has told me to ask you that are you happy with Allah? And Siddique Akbar like this with his finger, Ana an Rabbi radin, Ana an Rabbi radin, Ana an Rabbi radin. Meaning what? I am happy with Allah. I am happy with Allah. I am happy with Allah. Can we say this? Hand on heart. I said the Rajnainana. We're not happy, we're not content, even though we got everything. Through the efforts of our parents, our grandparents in this country, third and fourth generation of Muslims, Moja Maninji. Despite everything given to you and me on a silver platter, gold plate. Ajay, yes, I know, I don't want this, I want this, I want this, I want that. Toba, toba. Be happy with what you have. Always be grateful to Allah Almighty Jalla wa'ala. And not only was he the most wealthiest and the most generous from amongst the companions, but he was also the most courageous as well. The day Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq accepted Islam, he told everyone without fear. He freely talked about his religion, openly inviting people to Islam and the way of Allah and His Rasul. 6 out of the 10 from the Ashra Mubashra came into Islam because of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. Sayyidina Uthman Ghani came into Islam because of Siddique Akbar. Sayyidina Talha bin Ubaidillah came into Islam because of Siddique Akbar. Sayyidina Abdul Rahman ibn Auf came into Islam because of Siddique Akbar. Sayyidina Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah came into Islam because of Siddique Akbar. मामूली चीज तो नहीं ना. इसी तरीके से on the day of the battle of Badr, second year after Hijrah, the angel said, do you not see a Siddiq al-Akbar with the Prophet ﷺ in the shelter, standing there without fear? And he stood shoulder to shoulder with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the day of the battle of Badr. Isi tariqe se on the day of the battle of Uhud, everyone was fighting when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was attacked. Most fled, but Siddique Akbar was the first to stand there and defend the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or isi tariqe se Siddique Akbar radiyallahu ta'ala who also participated in the digging of the trench, the battle of Handaq, when he was 56 years old. Our 56-year-old उन्होंने बस हो जानी है. आने लगता है arthritis रहता है, ये है वो है वो बस दियो ऐसा कुछ नहीं होना. लेकिन ये देखो Siddique Akbar for 20 days digging the trench around the city of Al-Madinatul Munawwara. So he was the most generous from amongst the companions. He was the most courageous from amongst the companions. Like this, no doubt, he was the best friend of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. तवज्जो है ना? The best friend of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said what? When everyone rejected me, Abu Bakr Siddiq was the first to believe in me. Siddique Akbar was the first to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From the moment he accepted Islam until the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did farda from this dunya, Siddique Akbar did not leave the side of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam except when he was authorized. Albatta we know now he's resting next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Mazar-e Anwar of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He suffered just as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam suffered. He would openly call the people to Islam. He was the first orator in Islam. And he was responsible for buying the freedom of Sayyidina Bilal al-Habshi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and many other slaves he set free as well. He was present at all of the battles. 27 major battles Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took part in. Siddique Akbar was present at all of them. He was either inside the tent with the Prophet ﷺ, or he would stand outside the tent and guard Rasulullah ﷺ. And he was the shadow of Rasulullah ﷺ. Imam Kastalani writing there Al-Mawahib, that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had no saya. Light upon light gives no shadow. And then they go on to write that the shadow of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. Why? Because he never left the side of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Do you understand? And then the peak of this was what? The peak of this was at the occasion of the migration. The peak of companionship was achieved during the hijrah. Such closeness in their friendship that the Prophet ﷺ would visit Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq day and night. But on the day of the migration, Nabi ﷺ visited at midday, during the day, to give him the good news that Allah Almighty had chosen Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to accompany the Prophet ﷺ on this migration journey. So they spent then 3 days and 3 nights in Ghare. And then we know how Siddique Akbar, as they were going towards the mountain, sometimes Siddique Akbar was on the right hand side, sometimes on the left hand side, sometimes in front of the Prophet, sometimes behind the Prophet. Ma haluka, oh Abu Bakr, what are you doing? Jawab mein sabak hai, Siddique Akbar says what? Ya Rasulullah, Ya Habib Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When I fear that the enemy will attack you from the right, I stand on your right hand side. When I fear that the enemy will attack you from the left, I stand on your left hand side. When I fear that they will attack you from in front or from behind, I stand either in front of you or behind you. The first person to defend the honor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to do para upon Namus Risalat is Siddique Akbar. And the first muhafiz of Aqidah Khatm Nabuwat was also Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala. Yes? Understand and know. And then, of course, he carried the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the bottom of the mountain to the top. Those of you who climbed the mountain will know how difficult it is. Siddique Akbar was 51 years old. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam 53 years old. So he wasn't just carrying the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was carrying the noor of Nabuwat or Risalah. So Quran mein hai na, Inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah. Indeed, Safa and Marwa from amongst the signs of Allah. Why was Safa and Marwa from amongst the signs of Allah? Which mother or which prophet ran between the two mountains? Say the Bibi Hajra. And she had Ismail al-Islam in her hands, and they ran between Safa and Marwa looking for water, looking for provisions. That running was so beloved to Allah Almighty Jalla wa'ala that Safa and Marwa became from amongst the Sha'irullah. Isi tarike se Quran mein hai wattakhidhu min maqami Ibrahima musalla. That the maqam of Ibrahim al-Islam becomes a place of worship. Why? Because that place has a nisbat with the Qadamain Sharifain of Ibrahim al-Islam. Stop, think. Then what do you think is the maqam of Siddique Akbar, who carried the Prophet ﷺ upon his blessed path? Mamuli cheez nahi na. Therefore we come to this understanding that Siddique Akbar is from amongst the Sha'airullah. And Siddique Akbar maqam, no doubt, is Wara'ul Wara. And then of course, before they entered inside to the cave, Siddique Akbar said what? Ya Rasulullah, give me ijazat, let me go inside, clean the inside of the cave. Let me clean the inside of the cave. And Siddique Akbar filled every hole, every gap. And one hole remained, and he took his blessed heel and placed it above that hole. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam entered. Sufi at this point said what? That the cave of Thawr is like our heart. That before Noor Mustafa can enter into our heart, allow Siddique Akbar to enter into your heart and clean the inside of your heart. Just like he cleaned the inside of the cave. And when the cave was cleaned and prepared, then Amina Kalal, Tajdar Madina, Khatam al-Nabiyyin entered inside the cave. Then he says what? Ya Rasulullah, Ya Habib, you must be tired. Why don't you rest? Who was carrying who? Siddique Akbar carried the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Lekin ye ghulami aur mohabbat ki intiha hai na. Allahu Akbar. Siddique Akbar says, Ya Rasulullah, you must be tired. Why don't you rest? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then rest in the blessed laps of Siddique Akbar radiyallahu ta'ala. Then we know a snake or scorpion, something similar to that, came and bit Siddique Akbar radiyallahu ta'ala. Shah Waliullah Muhaddis said, then we mentioned that snake or scorpion was waiting for thousands of years just for that moment in order to see the wadduha chera wallayl zulfa of Rasul Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What was blocking his way was the blessed heel of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. He was bitten, but he controlled his emotions. But the pain became unbearable, the anguish became. tears began to flow. One of the tears landed on the blessed cheek of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam awoken from their blessed sleep, and then said to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, what seems to be the problem? Why are you crying? Siddique Akbar didn't say, don't worry, I'll call an ambulance. Don't worry, we'll call 911. Siddique Akbar knew, ye sahabi ka aqeeda hai na, afdalul bashar ka aqeeda hai na, yahi fark hai between sahabi and wahabi. Siddique Akbar said, what? Ya Rasulullah, Ya Habibullah, something has bitten me. He knew that all of the cures to his illnesses are with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whether spiritual, whether physical. Siddique Akbar is teaching you, me, our aqeeda. So Siddique Akbar there and then says, Ya Rasulullah, something has bitten me. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the blessed luabe, took the blessed saliva, put it on that part. And through the blessings of the saliva of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that pain that Siddique Akbar was experiencing was removed. Therefore, my youngsters, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not like you and me. Yes, a human being, but not like any ordinary human being. Just like a diamond is like a stone, but not like any ordinary stone. ये आजकल बिदअत, innovation of our time. Oh, हमारे जैसे हैं जी, हमारे जैसे हैं. No. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not like you and me. When you should go home as well. When one of your children hit themselves on the table, you take your saliva as well. You put it on his, what you call a part. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not like you and me. You and me are not like him. There are 27 major differences. Mufti Ahmad Yar Khan Naimi of Gujarat, in the famous Ja'al Haq mentioned 27 major differences between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his ummah. Mera time ho gaya takriban. Pura. Of course, you know, if you haven't been, this is for you. This is the mountain. From the bottom to the top. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was carried by Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And then, of course, 3 days and 3 nights. Such was the kayfiyat that Allah Almighty mentions all of this in the Quran. ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا. Surah number 9, verse number 40. So the sahabiyyat of Siddique Akbar is established from the Quran. And anyone who does inkar of the sahabiyyat of Siddique Akbar radiyallahu ta'ala, that person is a kafir. वो बंदा काफिर है, वो दायरा इस्लाम से खारिज है. The one whom Allah says that Siddique Akbar is not a believer, is not a Muslim. And we find certain people saying this today. लोग आने no, इत्तिहाद करो जी, unity within the ummah. No, unity can only be upon the truth. Unity can only be upon the truth. And then we know that everything that the Prophet ﷺ had in his blessed chest, in his Sina Mubarak, Sadr Anwar, he transferred to the Sina of Siddique Akbar. Sina to Medina Munawwara. When they arrived in Medina Munawwara, Ahlul Medina, because they hadn't seen the Prophet, they didn't know who the Prophet ﷺ was, who Siddique Akbar was. That's when Siddique Akbar took the chadar, placed it upon the head of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Hada Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Hada Rasulullah. This is the message of Allah. This is the message of Allah. Allahu Akbar. And then no doubt our Aqidah is what? Conclusive words. Concluding towards the discussion now. It is unanimously agreed by the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah that the greatest man after the prophets of Allah is Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. This is from amongst the alamat of the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Tafsir al-Shaykhain wa Hubb al-Khatamain wal Maswa al-Khuffain. What we're going to do wazahat upon this. After Siddique Akbar ka pehla number, Umar Farooq ka dooja number, Uthman Ghani ka teeja number, और मौला कायनात का बस. And this is how Allah and His Rasul have decreed it to be. So if somebody comes 1,000 years later, 1,200 years later, 1,400 years, ऊपर till Qiyamah, if somebody comes and says, no, मेरी राय ये है that it should be Sayyidina Ali Murtaza first and Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq after. Or आजकल बकायदा we find some people, Tabzilis bakaida who say what? That politically Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was the successor, but spiritually the successor is Sayyidina Ali. But then tell me, 8 times this riwayat comes in Bukhari Sharif. Muru Abu Bakr fal yusalli bin nas. And 17 prayers Siddique Akbar led during the last few moments and lamhat and days of the Prophet ﷺ on this earth. Tell me when the Prophet ﷺ said, command Abu Bakr Siddiq to stand on the musalla and lead the Sahaba in the prayer. Are you going to say that's a siyasi decision? Or is that ruhani? Of course, that is a spiritual decision. And then Sayyidina Ali Murtaza himself prayed behind, as did all of the Ahlul Bayt Athar. They prayed behind Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. This is why from the Al-Qabat of Siddique Akbar is Imam al-Sahaba. He is the Imam of the Sahaba. Khalas. So if somebody else has any second, third, fourth opinion on this, he cannot be from the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Doing taqseem of the Khilafat of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, or saying that ye Ruhani hai, ye Baqaida Lada hai, this is not the way of the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And then you've got so many narrations here. Sahaba ka bhi aqidah hai. And Sayyidina Abu Hurairah said what? We as the companions used to sit and discuss, and we agreed that the greatest man in the Ummah after the Prophet ﷺ is Abu Bakr, then Umar, then Uthman. Imam Ibn Asaq ibn Naql of this in the Tarikh Damishq. Like this, Sayyidina Umar Farooq used to say to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, oh, best person after the noble Prophet ﷺ. Like this, Sayyidina Ali Murtaza says what? The best person of this Ummah after the Prophet is Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, then Sayyidina Umar Farooq. Bas? Sayyidina Ali himself is saying this. If somebody says, no. To Sayyidina Ali, tu zyada janne ho. So anyone who does not accept the outright superiority and greatness of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq after the Prophet is not from Sunni Islam. Yes? Even if they celebrate the Milad of the Prophet, even if they do Muntri, yaar bhi Shif Hazrat. आजकल ये भी लोग है कि बेवकूफ बनाने से धोखा और ये सभी मिला शरीफ मनाने और यार मनाने तो अपने वस्ते मनाने हो ना. Tell us what's your aqidah regarding the afdaliyat mutlaqa of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. Tell us what's your aqidah regarding the Sahaba Ikram and Ahlul Bayt Athar. Bil khusus Sayyidina Amin Muawiyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Sayyidina Abu Sufyan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Sayyidina Hind radiyallahu ta'ala anha. लोगों ने असली सुन्नी है जी, क्यों मिलाद शरीफ मनाई लिया? और मिलाद शरीफ मनाने नाल कोई बंदा सुन्नी नहीं ना बनना. Or those things after. First is the usul and the mu'taqadat and the musallamat of the Ahli Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Awam don't even know. Awam basi julli jane. Bare peer, bare maulvi bhi baqaida is par is tariqe naal pisni jane na, they fall. This is why be careful who you take your deen from, who you take your religion from. Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, his dawr khilafat lasted for 2 years and 4 months approximately. During this time, many events occurred, many great battles were fought. The weaker Muslims stopped paying the zakat. Siddique Akbar didn't have a soft policy towards them. Siddique Akbar said, if they refuse to pay the zakat, so even Sayyidina Umar says, oh Abu Bakr, maybe we should reconsider our decision here. Siddique Akbar said, no. If they refuse to pay the zakat, there's only one decision, one faisla. That's it. And then the second biggest issue in his Dawr al-Khilafat was what? That Musaylama Kadhab claimed to be a. And here, those of you who have got the books, and if you haven't got the books, apne HIF students ki tarh na. All the youngsters at the back. Asa chane sa ye baqaida is tariqe naal shamil ho. Chalo, apni neki vich lage san. Ye is tariqe naal. If everyone turns to page 37, please. Gal aakhri samjho gal. Battle of Yamama, Jange Yamama. Page 37, everyone. Those of you who got the books, please. Is everyone page 37? Yeah. What was the name of the battle? Battle of Yamama. So when Musaylama and his rebels, when Musaylama claimed prophethood and his rebels followed him, what happened? Siddique Akbar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he announced that the way we're going to deal with Musaylama is by way of jihad. There was no table talk, there was no dialogue, there was no come to Medina Munawwara, let's discuss it. No. Ek hi faisla. What was that? That Ilane jihad. Ilane? Dilepi gion. Ilane jihad. So, Sayyidina Ali Murtaza said what? Oh Abu Bakr, if you go and become shaheed, what's going to become of the Muslim Ummah? Siddique Akbar is now around 61 years old. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq sent an army of 14,000 Sahaba. And who was made commander-in-chief? Saifun min Siyufillah, Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid radiyallahu ta'ala. And 14,000 Sahaba fought against how many rebels? You'll find the answer on page 38. Well done, young man. 80,000 rebels. 80,000 munkirine aqidah khatm nabuwat. Khana le no? तो ये लात मार देना जी. अच्छा खत्म शरीफ परसा और बस दुआ ही होन शुक्रिया मौलवी जान छोड़ो ना ये इस तरीके नाल 80 the last point now 80,000 people linking this discussion with Aqidah Khatm Nubuwwat that we spoke about before 5:30 80,000 people उस दौर ज़माने की बात है no social media no ITV BBC Sky News Siddique Akbar is मौजूद and present Farooq Azam is मौजूद and present Usman Ghani Ali Murtaza Sahaba Ikram Ashraf Mubashara Ahlul Bayt Yadhara मौजूद and present कम पेश 1 लाख Sahaba Ikram were मौजूद and present and somebody claimed to be a prophet I said Ajr होने जी फलाने इतने कादियानी हुए कि ये था वो so how did they deal with it Ilan jihad battle took place known as the Battle of Yamama and during this battle Musaylama and his followers had the audacity to raise the slogan of Takbir जिस ऐसा भी कहने नारे तकबीर बस हो गया मैं इतना लाइव रहना हूँ बस सुस्ती हो गया ना नारे तकबीर They had the audacity to raise the slogan of Takbir. So how did Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid respond? Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid responded by saying to the Sahaba, say, Ya Muhammadahu, Ya Muhammadahu. What did they say? Ya Muhammadahu, Ya Muhammadahu. This is a few months after Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have been Zahri Parda from this dunya. And they are hundreds of miles away from Medina Munawwara. Ajkal can, oh, you can't say Ya Rasulullah. You can't say Ya Habiballah. Main Allah ne fatwa fir Sahaba Ikram par. Ya Muhammadahu, Ya Muhammadahu. And not just on one occasion, many occasions. Like we mentioned here, page 38. On another occasion, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar had a cramp in his leg. Imam Bukhari do naql of this in the Al-Adab al-Mufrad. So somebody said to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar, remember the one who is the most beloved to you. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar says, Ya Muhammadahu, Ya Muhammadahu. As soon as he calls out to the Prophet ﷺ, the pain in his leg is removed. It goes away. So this is the way of the Sahaba. ये सहाबा वाला अकीदा है. And then how many मुनकिरीन अकीदा ख़त्म नबूवत were killed? Top of page 39. How many were killed? 36,000 of them. Musaylama himself was killed by Sayyidina Wahshi bin Harb radiyallahu ta'ala. Sayyidina Abu Dujana removed his head from his shoulders. This is how the Sahaba dealt with munkireen aqidah khatm nubuwwat. And how many Sahaba became shaheed? 1,200 of them. Maslaki hassasiyat samjo. From the battle of Badr to the battle of Hunain, Kaba Pesh, around 250 Sahaba were shaheed. But in one battle, on one day, 1200 Sahaba Ikram shaheed were. Around 400 of them were Hufaz of the Quran. 11 of them were Badri Sahaba. Maslaki hassasiyat samjo. And today, Aqidah Khatm Nubuwwat is considered to be kids' play. You can say what you want. Hukmaran is par tawajjuh hi nahi karne. Whether it's in this country, whether it's in Mulk Pakistan, Aqidah Khatm Nubuwwat hamara bunyadi aqidah hai. Is par jeena hai, is par marna hai. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala samjhne ki aur amal karne ki tawfiq ata farma. Baki wahi hai, you can see they left this dunya at the age of 63. And he left this dunya without anything to his name. And he left this dunya in the 13th year after Hijrah on the 22nd of Jumadul Akhir. And today they are resting next to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as you can see here. First Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this big circle here, then Siddique Akbar, then Farooq Azam. And this land was purchased by Abu Bakr Siddique. Two orphans, Suhail and Sahel. Ji, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala izzata den, barakata den. I've gone over by about 10 minutes or so. I forgive or ask for forgiveness. Hopefully we enjoy the discussion today. Double topic, alhamdulillah. First, Aqidah Khatm Nubuwwat, we went through the evidences in light of Quran, Sunnah and Ijma'. And then we spoke about and gave tribute to the greatest human being after the Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Once again, I'm grateful to Hazrat Allama Umair Sahib, Hazrat Allama Hafiz Ubaid Sahib, mashallah, who have encouraged their students to also sit in for the last 40 minutes or so. And all of the brothers and sisters, mashallah, who made the effort to join us. Jazakumullah khair. Zindagi inshallah 2025, which will say inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah for everyone to attend. Inshallah we'll make a short dua and then food will be served. Then inshallah we'll have Isha Ramadan. 7 o'clock. Everyone can read Alhamdulillah and then the class 3 times and we get dua.
Ja kari aur ya ne pehle
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم. یا اللہ تبارک تعالیٰ ہماری یہ مجلس کو قبول و منظور فرما. یا اللہ جو ہم نے سکھا سکھایا عمل کرنے کی توفیق عطا فرما. یا اللہ ہمیں حضور علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کی ختم نبوت کا اس پہ علم حاصل کرنے کی توفیق عطا فرما. آپ علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کی ختم نبوت پہ پہرا دینے کی توفیق عطا فرما. یا اللہ جو بھی لوگ ان کے ختم نبوت کا پہرا دیتے یا اللہ تو ان کی حفاظت فرما. دونوں جہاں میں برکتیں نصیب فرما. یا اللہ آج جتنا بھی ہم نے یہ فاتحہ اور مل کیا گیا یا اللہ اس کا سارے کا سارا ثواب افضل البشر بعد الانبیاء بالتحقیق سیدنا ابوبکر صدیق رضی اللہ تعالیٰ عنہ کی روح کو پیش کر قبول فرما. اللہ کے درجات کو بلند فرما. آج کے جو جتنا بھی کھانا بنایا گیا ہماری کچن اسٹاف کی طرف سے بھائی شمشاد شاہ صاحب بھائی راشد بھائی محمود یا اللہ ان کو برکت نصیب فرما. جو یہ ٹائم مسجد کو دیتے یا اللہ ان کو شاد و آباد فرما. صلی اللہ تعالیٰ علی محمد وعلی آلہ وصحبہ اجمعین برحمتک یا ارحم الراحمین.